They are, they just can't accept the facts. It's too dissonant with what they've been doing. They don't change.
So, Michael, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. There's something that we didn't touch on last time that is quite an important topic to cover. So, you agreed to come back on and discuss that. So, would you like to go into a bit of detail about it?
I would. Thank you, Dave. I'd like to talk about prostate enlargement. Doctors call it benign prostatic hyperplasia. Uh, this is something that affects one of every four men at the time of the end of their lives. One in every eight men in the United States dies with prostate cancer. And I'm going to make an attempt to tie the two together, the enlarged prostate and the prostate cancer. And I intend to talk about this because I would like to talk about this because I believe with these statistics, there are many men in your audience that may be interested or benefit from this. And everyone, if you have even if the viewer is female, if they have, family and friends that are male, this is topical. So 10 years ago, I began getting reduced flow rate urine, and it was triggered by something highly unusual in my case, but then it progressed over time in kind of a more natural way. The trigger was 10 years ago, I went to a doctor's office, a skin doctor. I had a lesion, a small mark on below my eye, surgically removed, just a couple millimeter diameter, very minor. Within 2 days afterwards, I began a process that turned out to be flesh eating microbes of some kind. I nearly lost the tip of my nose, the tip of my right thumb, and the tip of my penis in this really fast moving infection that I got at the skin doctor's office. And that infection on my penis ended up giving me an infection of the urinary tract system. I went to a doctor. I was repeatedly treated. I ended up not losing anything, but I fought this infection in my urinary tract for 18 months. And the first types of antibiotic were partially effective, but did not completely uh, get rid of my infection. And foci of that infection ended up being the prostate gland. And over those 18 months, the treatments got more and more powerful and unusual antibiotics. And eventually, those antibiotics worked. So I thank doctors for that process that led to relief, because urinary tract infections can be agony. And at times this was agony, and it just went on and on. So after that cleared, what did not clear entirely was the flow. And then over the years, the flow got worse and worse. When I would get a viral infection, it would sometimes cause the flow to be worse. Something just like the flu, influenza would do that for me. So at times the agony returned a couple years ago, and a couple times in the last few years when I got the viruses. my flow would get restricted to the point that I returned to agony just because of the inability to empty my bladder and the pain that that causes, and preparing to uh, go to the emergency room at hospital to seek out a way to empty the bladder. In in none of the cases did I actually end up in the emergency room. I was able to uh, avoid it, and I've I was taking the D-mannose. That's a pill that's the extract, a type of sugar that's in cranberry juice, and drinking much cranberry juice. I mean, a couple jars of cranberry juice in a day, concentrate, and so forth. So that leads me up to the point of beginning the no carbohydrate, no plant diet. And uh, it was very slow moving. It's not something that it's not something that I saw any kind of change over just a few months with the carnivore no carb diet. But at this point, being nearly 3 years since I began transitioning and being more than a year of being strict carnivore, my flow has returned. And I visited doctors, one after another. I wanted to not ignore that. Well, for years I thought, well, I'll just let it pass. And it didn't pass. And then for years I went to doctors looking for help because I wanted to make sure that my prostate was as good as I could make it. And there are drugs, prescription drugs and so forth, that are available to to shrink the prostate and to free the flow. And those are certainly, they are effective. But as with most things like this, it does not affect the root cause. So as soon as I would stop, it would come back worse than before. Stop with the drugs. So, uh, so my message is, try this diet, no carb, no plant, and give it a few years and see what happens. Now I move into another comment where I'm trying to connect two things: the uh, enlarged prostate and the low flow with the cancer. So I want to start by reading what Bing.com Copilot says when I search for, is there a link between prostate enlargement and prostate cancer? Bing says, quote, having BPH, benign prostatic hyperplasia, does not directly increase the risk of developing prostate cancer, but both conditions may occur simultaneously, unquote. So this is an interesting weasel word, and it comes from the reference that there's several references that Bing Copilot provides for as the source of this. The weasel word is does not directly increase the risk. Well, we know from Bart K that the use of risk is suspect most of the time with most of these inputs. Most of the references were CDC government references, but does not directly increase the risk of developing prostate cancer. It doesn't say it doesn't increase the risk. And to say that it doesn't directly, to me, implies that it indirectly increases the risk. And so putting that together with what many of us have heard, where the increase in cancer in the general population, just all total cancers in the United States population, have been increasing over time, and that is correlated with uh, poor diet, uh, and and metabolic disease and diabetes, and I've demonstrated N=1 that the enlarged prostate is correlated with the diet to correct my metabolic disease. Then is there a relationship between the enlarged prostate and the prostate cancer? I think it's a highly asymmetrical risk or thought. I don't like to use the word risk because it's hard to back up, as it's not causal. But if we're making a decision about our own health and we have something like enlarged prostate and we're trying to fix that with diet, and we think that all the things I said were true, the metabolic disease is related to cancer rate, then it's really easy to just go on the assumption, right or wrong, that the cancer rate might fall eating properly as well, no carb. And so I wonder if this whole area of how prevalent prostate cancer is today in the United States male population is kind of a, I don't know, I can't say it. It doesn't make any sense to call it diabetes type 4, but like, is it really that correlated? Uh, just a thought. So that's really the end of what I have to say about my own journey with the prostate, enlarged prostate, and the reduced flow, except to say I'm back, so I can have multiple orgasms in one night and multiple starts of ejaculation. So I see a big improvement, not just in the flow, but in a number of related things related to the prostate. Um, it's rolled me back to more than 10 years ago. Um, I feel almost like a young man in this area now. I want to mention something about my diet history and health history also. Though I thought I was eating well, um, and I thought I was eating meat daily. Uh, Probably the thing I was most short of was oil, which may have been a good thing since I didn't realize that seed oils could cause inflammation. And I believe a good part of what my problems were caused by was my A1C more than 3 years ago. Blood serum A1C was 5.4%. So I was relatively low even before I started the no carb, no plant diet. And so that, and for many other reasons, I believe that probably in my case, the inflammation was the dominant problem I had. I was, as you said, I was on before and I've described this in detail. I'm not going to go back through that. But I wanted to mention that I'm a fifth generation Seventh day Adventist. I was born and raised in Southern California, where in this area where the Seventh day Adventists founded their church and where most of them lived, uh, especially the first generations. I believe that this church was founded in 1863, which is about the time my ancestors founded farms in California. I don't practice with the organized Seventh day Adventist church, but uh, I knew my great grandparents and grandparents, and of course my parents, and they were very interested in leading a clean lifestyle. They didn't drink, they didn't dance, they didn't smoke. They really tried not to take a lot of risks, and they thought, I think mistakenly thought, that vegetarian was the way to go. And I think that they were wrong about that. And I have overcome that in the background of my life. I think that this contributed in part to my problems that were corrected by no carb, no plant diet. But I just wanted to mention that more or less all of them that were involved with the Seventh-day Adventist on mostly on my mom's side of the family uh, died with either with or because of type 3 diabetes. And so these notions, when I hear people talking about how the blue zone around Loma Linda, California, where Dr. Stephen Gundry was a surgeon and he talks about this all the time, I think that the probable reason why they lived shorter is because of the vegetarian diet. And the probable reason why they lived longer is because they were so very careful about living a clean life, um, pretty tight knit, um, as cultural ways of living go. And what I'm trying to do is avoid type 3 diabetes. I mentioned that I started getting brain fog. Uh, Now I want to start. So that's what I want, the information I wanted to comment on that. Now I want to get back and close with the aspect of being guided by doctors on this. So I mentioned that I went to see doctors, and via their antibiotics, they eventually, after 18 months, got rid of my sometimes agonizing infection. So doctors were helpful, but doctors did nothing otherwise. They directed me in the wrong direction for everything else. Nothing else they had I thought was suitable. So I think this diet approach is more powerful than anything they had. But my model of going to a doctor now is guided by the Dunning-Kruger effect. So I looked at myself as like, I get a disease, like I say, oh, I have an infection, now I have problems with my prostate. I don't, I'm ignorant about it. I'm not a doctor. I don't know anything about it. So I go to the doctor and ask for advice. And I'm looking for a doctor with experience, hoping that they're over in the wisdom phase on this curve. But especially regarding diet and nutrition, they seem to be 100% over here on Mount Stupid. And they end up not offering any viable help and actually arguing against things like I did to fix this and getting in the way. But I think it's a lot worse than that. My experience is that even if I like go and find a specialist as a surgeon, and I think that I'm finding a surgeon with a lot of experience and they've got to be over here on this curve somewhere. Um, and for a surgeon, they may well be. But when we change and ask the surgeon what it is that we should eat, we are going to be asking them about a topic where they're over here at Mount Stupid. And that's been my experience with all my doctors. Even when I go to I went, all of these visits to the doctor I went to were all urinary specialists except the first visit to my family doctor. They were, none of them had these answers. And my prior experience that I mentioned in the prior interview uh, was that doctors don't seem to be learning. They're not lifetime learners. And now I'm going to go even further and say on like Bart Kay's channel, he interviews doctors. He talks to them about his information and his findings as a scientist in this area. And he's talking to doctors that have very little, they're medical doctors, so they've gotten virtually no training in nutrition, and the profession gave all that away to the dietitians. And so even though I've selected a doctor that's hopefully over here in his practice of surgery, you're going to get answers from over here on everything else from this doctor. So that's what I found. Uh, and not only that is they're incapable. I mean, literally 100% of them I've interacted with, and these examples that I'm saying, like you can see on Bart's channel, is they cannot, will not, and do not move even after instructed, taught, discussed, studied, seen 30 years of patients. They will not move from here to here on nutrition. And I think it's because uh, they're board certified. They really believe in what they were taught as being the truth. They are, they just can't accept the facts. It's too dissonant with what they've been doing. They don't change. That's about all I've got to say on that. I'm going to just close by saying my grandmother was a dietitian. She was the top manager of a food service at a hospital most of her adult life. She, all her children drank soda pop for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They ate Fruit Loops. All their teeth were destroyed uh, early on, like by the time they reached adulthood. They were in terrible shape. So then I know something about what my grandmother, the dietitian, was meal planning at the hospital for food, and it was vastly worse than what I ate my entire life. That was not good enough for me, where I had to move from um, to no carb, no plant to fix my own many conditions. So I I would say that she demonstrated that even for herself and her own family, she was an utter failure in diet. Um, so it's not just doctors, it's dietitians also.
The Dunning-Kruger graph you just showed there really does ring true for me when I think about conversations I've had with doctors over the years. And I always just put it down to they didn't want to say they didn't know. But perhaps it's as you say, perhaps it's more than that. It's just like this kind of feeling like, well, I know everything. I'm board certified. I know what I'm talking about.
I agree with
And
that.
mm,
The y axis is confidence. For decades, I've been saying that I would prefer to work with colleagues, scientists, that were lower confidence because they were easier to work with, more open to different ideas. But most of all, that confidence seems to be fake. When we're over here, we put on the face of confidence. We don't answer patient questions and so forth. And this occurs in my profession as well, because we don't know and we put up a facade. I'm not talking about 100% of doctors, but I'm talking about 90, perhaps 95% in my experience or more, where they are unwilling to uh, drop their fake confidence and actually state that they don't know. When I talk to doctors about uh, their basis for doing the things they've recommended to me, they typically, in a very confident fashion, will say something kind of trivial, even stupid, or things that don't make any logical sense. And when I follow up and I'm looking for a back and forth on something, I don't get it from them. And I believe it's because they're stuck on this curve in the high confidence Mount Stupid area. And so I've gotten to the point now where when I seek out new doctors, if I detect that they're confident, I'm looking to see if it's a fake confidence by asking questions. So I'm not typically able to completely understand a doctor in just a few minutes interview, but if they won't answer questions, or if they, especially if I say, I talk to the doctor and say, would you mind if I sent you a scholarly article that contradicted or supported my point of view or what I want to do, or contradicted their point of view? Um, they literally have never, none of them have ever provided feedback. None of them have ever read the papers I've sent them. Uh, I think it's really, really sick, uh, to, because I believe they're mass harming people. And that's why I want to have, one of the reasons why I want to have conversations with doctors. At this point, they are able to change my mind if I hear something that I can see the logic of. But it's also because, um, like in the case of the doctor that threatened me with giving 5,000 international units of D3 to my doctor and said she was going to call Child Protective Services on me because of doing so, and I provided her the paper and I didn't fire her, it was because I want her to read it. I want to help, because she's got this career ahead of her where she's going to do that to every child in some way. Maybe she's not going to threaten them all with Child Protective Services, but she's going to be stupid. I'm trying to get her to push herself over Mount Stupid. And I've never had a doctor do that.
We maybe talked a little bit about this in the last interview. It's like it's almost as if they think, well, I've paid a lot of money for this degree and I'm still paying off the debt for this, and I'll be paying off the debt for this for years to come. You don't get to question me because this has been my life.
I agree with that, Dave. And so I've had, I have known several people that went from a science degree to a medical degree for various reasons, mostly because it's less work and it pays well, better. And 100% of the people I knew that went through the hard science and got a degree, undergraduate and postgraduate degrees, they said that the earning the degree, the medical degree, was far easier than the science degree. And I think one of them said it doesn't require a brain to be a doctor. Uh, they said there was a lot of memorization. You need to learn the parts of the body, and terminology, and Latin is very helpful. But it's not, these are not difficult programs. So they're not, doctors are not trained in the same way. They don't have nearly as much hard science. They don't have nearly as much physics or math. And so, so I've seen some studies, you know, these are only correlations. They are not airtight. They're not proof of anything, but like just average numbers, like the average physics student that graduates with a physics degree is an IQ of maybe 135, maybe higher. The data I've seen is incomplete. For a hard science degree or engineering degree, 125 IQ. For a soft science, 115. They don't score nearly as well on standardized tests. And doctors are around 105, which is approximately the average. So I don't know if it's partly intelligence or what. I think it's mostly attitude, because I think these concepts, anybody can pick them up if they really are interested in them.
It's but and the problem is it still leaves us in this dilemma where we're relying on people who, you know, we don't 100% know if we can trust or not.
Yeah, I 100%. That's correct. I agree with you. And I 100% do not trust doctors on, especially on nutrition. But Other than antibiotics and broken bones type surgeries, no doctor has ever done anything but hinder me.
Michael, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this extra information with us. People want to reach out to you, they can get you at the email address on screen. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so, if you want to see Michael's original interview, please check out the video that's in between us right now. Thanks so much for coming on, Michael, and sharing the rest of your story with us. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Dave.